Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. You know, at the beginning of every show, I sit here with this board in front of me and these little buttons and dials and whatnot, and I think to myself, have I pushed all the buttons? Have I pushed all the dials? Have I done everything I'm supposed to do? And every week I have a brief moment of panic that I'm forgetting something. But once again, we're here.
Well, I'm glad it's in your hands because I wouldn't have a clue. I just talk. That's all I do.
Hey, well, I tell people a lot of times when they ask me about the show, I'm like, well, my job is to basically put the ball on the tee and let John hit it as far as he wants to go with it.
And that is very accurate.
All right, well, we're going to kick off this show this week. We're going to talk a little college softball, something we usually talk a lot about during the years, but we've not talked as much about this year. We have a kind of a special occasion to talk about it because the WKU softball team won the Conference USA Tournament. They lost a game, then they had to win 3 games out of being eliminated. Like, they had no choice but to win the game or go home, and they did. And they also beat North Texas, the team that had put them in the elimination situation to start with and was the number 1 seed. And then they absolutely clubbed UAB 13-4 to win the championship on Saturday and get themselves back in the NCAA Tournament, John. And, you know, they got 3 local players. I say local to WKU, not local to us per se. 2 from Warren East and 1 from South Warren. And then I think they have 10 total Kentucky players on their roster, which we've talked before about WKU women's basketball, you know, recruiting a lot of in-state athletes, and their softball program does as well, John.
Well, I mean, first of all, congratulations to Western. But, you know, I knew Western had 3 from this area, and I knew they had some Kentucky kids. I didn't know they had 10, but that just kind of goes back to the you know, my perception of softball in this state. I think it's the number 1 girls sport. I think it's past basketball, and I think it passed basketball several years ago. To be honest with you, it's the most popular in terms of participation. Mm-hmm. From the 5 years old all the way to 18. Mm-hmm. The AA. It's not really the AAU circuit, but the summer circuit is incredible in youth softball.
Yeah. And
the quality of play, too, I think has surpassed basketball.
Right.
The amount of Division I players from Kentucky, Division II players from Kentucky, it's amazing. And, you know, Western having 10 from Kentucky and being the Conference USA champion tells you a lot.
Right.
And UK softball is a top 20 team as well, and they have Kentucky players.
Yeah.
Alabama, who just won the SEC tournament, has arguably the best pitcher in the nation, Montana Fouts from Grayson, Kentucky, a junior who throws it harder than probably any female I've ever seen. She throws it in the mid 70s, which would be like 100 for baseball. So I mean, the softball is extremely strong, and the NCAA softball tournament is probably has moved into like my top 5 sporting events I like to watch. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy watching it. I watched a lot of the SEC tournament this weekend, and I would rather, and no offense to the baseball guys, but I would rather watch a softball game than a baseball game many times because of the pace.
Yeah,
the pace is so much quicker, and I think the only thing that the women's softball is going to have to decide, including high school, is they're going to eventually going to have to decide, do they probably need to move the fences back. Mm-hmm. Because when the game was first established several years ago, it was dominated by pitching and low-scoring games, and now it's dominating by hitting. A lot of ways. The fences are probably too close, and they're going to maybe have to adjust to that. But it's a great game. And congratulations to Western. A friend of mine, Brett Williams, who I do the women's basketball with on radio, called the CSUS the Conference USA tournament. He got to call those games and does a great job with that. And you know, it's another good run by the women's sports at Western. I mean, they made a great run in volleyball, if you remember.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. lost to the eventual national champions
UK.
in that situation.
That's exactly right.
Well, and you going back to what you were just talking about, the fences and the hitting taking over. If I'm not mistaken, maybe it was 10 years ago, they actually moved the pitching circle back from the plate a little bit, and that seems to be the thing that opened up the hitting. Plus, you're probably just going back to what we were talking about, the rise of the game, especially in Kentucky, but also in the nation. You're probably getting better athletes playing, which means you're probably getting people who have quicker reflexes and that kind of stuff and just better at hitting the ball.
They are. They're getting the best athletes.
Yeah.
And it used to be at one time a bunting game.
Right.
And now it's a hitting game. I mean, those kids, you just watch them on TV or just go to a high school game. Those kids can flat out rake now. I mean, they can really, they drive the ball. You don't. Bunting is still a part of it, but not near. You don't see near the slaps and things like that. I mean, it's a game that's high powered, and like I said, I really enjoy watching them play.
Yeah, going back to the pace of play, I think that is my favorite thing about the softball, because the ball comes to the pitcher in the circle, they get the call, and generally it's just like they're going.
And the batters are not stepping out constantly, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't. And
some of the gamesmanship that exists in baseball does not yet exist in softball, and I hope it stays that way.
I agree. They get in They get into the box. Both the pitcher and the batter gets their signals from whatever, and they're ready to hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does make the game exciting. And the thing is like going back to the 10 years ago when they moved the circle back some, they added the extra. Used to in high school they only did 6 innings of fast pitch, and they added the 7th inning. I don't know if that was at the same time or somewhere in that time frame. I don't remember exactly when that was.
I don't remember that. It's always been 7 as far as I remember, so okay. I don't know.
I was thinking they may have done that pretty early then, after the fast pitch came along. But, and also the other thing was used to, if you had a pitcher in softball, I mean, basically it was over with.
You're dominant. Yep.
And you needed one, and you still kind of only need one. But now we see this where softball coaches in high school and maybe not so much in college, but certainly in high school, are developing that second and third pitcher to try to take some of the pressure off. I guess. It
takes the pressure off the pitcher, and the hitting has gotten so good that if they see the same pitcher over and over and over, they'll adjust to it.
Yeah.
So you need another arm.
Right.
And you even see that in high school. Your better high school teams tend to have multiple arms.
Yeah.
I mean, the old days where one pitcher throws, the entire tournament and things like that, you still see it, but it's awful difficult for them.
Yeah. Well, and back to WKU. So they opened their region at Georgia on Friday against Georgia. You told me before we went on air it's technically Duke's region because Duke's the number 13 or 8 team, something like that.
Duke is the ACC champion.
Yeah.
And Duke's a program that's kind of really risen here lately. Mm-hmm. And they should have been awarded – they're the number 1 seed, but the way – because of the COVID rules, the NCAA decided I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago to name their top 20.
Right.
And anybody in that top 20 was at that time was going to get – if you were in that top 20, you was going to get one of the regions. Mm-hmm. And Duke won 14 out of the last 15 and moved themselves all the way up in the top 10 in the country. And because of that rather strange decision, in my opinion, Duke does not get to host, so they have to go to Georgia. And Georgia has actually lost, I think, 7 out of the last 8.
Yeah.
It's a very winnable game for Western, to be honest with you. But they're in when you're in the same with the 4 teams, when you're in with the ACC champion and a good SEC team, it's a loaded bracket.
Yeah, Georgia was ranked, I think, in the top 25 until this week. I think they dropped out in the last poll that was put up.
I would rather play Georgia than Duke.
Yeah. Obviously, one's hot and one's not.
From Western's perspective,
yeah,
yes.
and Western, I would say it might be on a hot streak because what are they, 32-13, I think, coming into the tournament.
Right.
They've had a solid year all the way around. Going back to the local players, I mean, 2 of them are pitchers, right? Shelby Nunn and
Katie Gardner.
Katie Gardner are pitchers. Kendall Smith, I think, is the catcher.
She is. Mm-hmm.
She also played at Warren East. So, I mean, 2 of their 3 pitchers are local to WKU kids.
They'll both throw, too.
Yeah.
But she uses 3 pitchers, and they all throw at any time, too. Oftentimes, Shelby Nunn is used in relief a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, she went to South Warren. And then the other 2 played at Warren East. And then, meanwhile, the Conference USA baseball tournament is coming up. Excuse me. And WKU managed to make the cut there.
They don't take everybody.
Yeah, I mean they made it two. They've made it 2 tournaments in a row, but the last one was 2019.
Last year's was canceled.
Yeah, last year's was canceled. So yeah, I don't remember exactly how many are left out, but yeah.
Yeah, in Western, I haven't really, to be fair, kept up with them in baseball. Every time I look at their record, they're 16-16 or 20-20, 24-24. They're right on that line where they've never gotten all that hot, but never have had a long losing streak. So you wish them luck. Conference USA in baseball is a pretty strong baseball. You got the Florida teams, Florida Atlantic, Florida International, and Rice obviously is a national power. So it's a strong baseball league.
Yeah, don't leave out Southern Miss.
Southern Miss has traditionally been good.
I think the thing that actually you mentioned FAU. Well, the thing that helped out WKU is they won a game against FAU over the weekend. And going back to their series at Southern Miss, they won a game against them as well. So they've won some. I think both of those maybe were on the back end of the series, and so they've managed to win some games against the teams that they traditionally just don't win a game against. So that's helped them out and got them into the Conference USA tournament.
Yeah, wish them the best. Where is it? Do you know? I know it's not in Bowling Green.
No, I'm trying. It's in Hattiesburg, I believe.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's down at Southern Miss's place. Or, no, they're playing Southern Miss. Actually, I don't know where it is. Yeah, they're playing Southern Miss to open the tournament. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we'll start off with the Barren County Trojanettes, talking a little bit about softball from last week. They played 3 games in 3 days, basically. Won 2 of them, lost 1 of them. They beat Campbellsville 4-1. On senior night, they beat Russell County. I think it was 9-1.
They beat Russell County twice.
Yeah, 9-1 both games, as a matter of fact, last week.
Monday and Friday.
Yeah, and then they lost to South Warren in between those, the Campbellsville and that second Russell County game, 9-2. Going back to the hitting thing we were talking about in the previous segment, just talking about softball in general, that does seem to be the thing that Barren does well. They do hit the ball well. They've got some sluggers in the lineup, but I think on the flip side of that, one of the things they struggle with, and we talked about this like when they played the other top 25 teams, which is what South Warren is, they seem to struggle with some teams that have a little bit of speed, especially the ability to put the ball in play and then run the bases pretty effectively, which South Warren does that in spades. They are kind of like watching a college team in a way, just because if you look at the way they're built, they kind of mirror a more athletic team than what you're used to seeing in these parts of softball, I'd say.
Well, yes and no, but this part of softball has had state champions Greenwood and Allen County.
True. So,
and Warren East has been state runner-up. I think they were more like Warren East has been.
Yeah.
Athletic and good pitching and so forth. So, I mean, it's, Barren is 18-5, and all 5 losses are the top 25 teams.
Yeah. Nothing to be ashamed of.
No, I mean, South Warren has been number 1 and number 2 all year. They've lost to Lafayette, who's been number 1 and number 2 all year.
Mm-hmm.
So, Barron's lost to Assumption, who's in the top 25. Christian County, who's in the top 25. So they've their 5 losses it's not been disgraceful. The problem is they hadn't beaten any of them, and that's something I'm sure it's a little bit disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the South Warren game in particular, Thursday, they jumped on Barren very quickly, and Barren was, let's just be fair, never really in it. It was 9-0 before Barren scored.
Yeah, that's true.
And
they brought in the second pitcher before Barren got the
Reynolds which is the coach's daughter, is a very good pitcher.
Right.
And I can't remember who she signed with. It may be Western. I'm not really for sure, but she's a really nice player. And it's nothing wrong being 18-5, but it'd be nice to kind of get over that hump. And they have another chance this week because Barren has Greenwood this week.
Yeah.
But Barren's strength, for the most part, has been, they've got, Alyssa Curtis is hitting 380 and 7 homers.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And
hit one on senior night.
Yeah, and Lara Simmons is hitting 413. And I'm just naming. That's just a Mary Shaw homered the other day when I was there.
Yeah.
So against Campbellsville. So, and they rely on Lily Brody. I mean, she pitched all 4 games, and is I think has 17 out of 18 wins.
Yeah.
And she's one of their better hitters too. So, Barren is, they're still one of the, in my opinion, 4 teams that can win the region. But right now, I think South Warren and Greenwood you have to put ahead of them right now.
Yeah. And meanwhile, in their own district, and we'll get to Glasgow here in a little bit, but in their own district, Allen County has caught fire lately. They've been slugging the ball.
Absolutely.
And that's got to be a scary bit of a proposition getting into the district tournament in a couple of weeks.
Well, yeah. I mean, luckily Barren didn't have to play Allen.
Not initially.
That's right.
They'll have to play
they're opposite each other. And I think it's Allen has elevated themselves to probably top 5 or 6 in the region because they knocked off Warren East last week.
Right.
And at one time it looked like Barren was the prohibited favorite in the district, and now it's Barren and Allen.
Yeah.
Barren beat them early, but it was I think it was the first game of the year.
Yeah.
And Allen has drastically gotten better, mainly because they're so young. I mean,
right.
they've got 7th graders and 8th graders, and a lot of their better players are sophomores. Now, Barron's not old either. Barron's young.
Yeah.
But Allen has really, really improved. Give Coach Bonds a lot of credit and his team. You're right, they can really hit, and it could be some exciting play down the road in the district if both teams handle what they're supposed to handle.
Right. Yeah. At the first I'd say the first 3 weeks of the season, I don't know if I said it here, but I said it to folks out in the community. At that point in time in the 15th district, Barren was 10 runs better than everybody else in the district. And their early game results were bearing that out. I mean, they were basically winning by 10, 12 runs.
Right.
I don't know that gap still exists between them and Allen anymore. And I don't know about Monroe, but even Glasgow has shown improvement. We've talked about this the last couple of weeks. We've seen that they are growing because they also are a young team. They won back-to-back games last week. I mean, and they beat Grayson County pretty severely, which is something they struggled to do so far this year was put up runs, and they put them up against Grayson County. So that was they had beaten Adair as well last week. So, I mean, it was a good turn for them. Yeah,
and Glasgow went 2-1 last week. And, give them credit. Give 6-2 over Adair and 15-2 over Grayson. I think Addison McCoy got 1 win. Abigail Elmore got the other win. So
right.
Give them credit on the mound. Took it on chin to Allen, 17-2. And
right.
But but Glasgow has gotten better. I don't necessarily think they're a threat really right now, to be honest with you. But they've gotten better, and we've talked about that's the key for a young team. And
yeah.
And Lucy Richardson's hitting .481. I was looking at their stats.
Right.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
To hit .481, I don't care where you are and so forth. So, yeah, they're steadily doing, I think, what they want to do when you're relying on so many 8th graders and freshmen is to get wins when you can get wins. I know they've beaten Clinton a couple times, but the win against Grayson kind of got my eye a little bit because Grayson's not a bad program,
right.
and 15-2 is very impressive.
Yeah.
So good job by them as well.
Yeah, and so that's we see some corner rounding there from some of the teams. I mean, we started off talking about Barren, but we've seen Allen improving, especially when it comes to hitting the ball. Glasgow's improving, picking up those wins last week. They did take the one on the chin from Allen County, but that's kind of, I think, a testament to how much Allen has improved since the start of the year as well, especially at the plate. So, that's kind of how the softball's shaping up. Meanwhile, the Barren, the baseball shape up. Glasgow had a rather interesting week because they were down 5-1 to Bowling Green, which is arguably the best team in the region.
Think it's fair to say?
They were down 5-1 at home. They scored 8 runs in the bottom of the 6th inning, beat Bowling Green 9-5. That one just came out of the blue in a way, except for the thing we've talked about on this show week in and week out is Glasgow can really hit the ball.
They can. That's the best win they've had on the schedule.
Yes.
I mean, Bowling Green's a top 25 team.
Right.
And Glasgow's 12-11. That's not a great record, but 2 of their wins are against Franklin and Bowling Green. Mm-hmm. So give them credit. Glasgow has primarily got it done this year through hitting. Mm-hmm. But they did last week. They had a good week. They was 2-2. They beat Monroe 16-0. Not a surprise. Bowling Green 9-5, and then lost to a good Somerset team 5-1. Jackson Poland pitched that game. I thought holding them to 5 is not bad, and then lost to Greenwood 9-3. So they're kind of at that. even mark 12-11, but they've got 2 wins that just kind of jump off the page at you. And again, their hitting has been spectacular. Cole Stevens hitting 410.
Yeah.
I think Hunter Scott's 361, Cole Bush 354. I mean, that's some good hitting.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it was an interesting week for him. I mean, I'm sure Coach Royce would like the record to be better, but at the same time, he is kind of a guy that preaches what you're doing at the end of the season is the thing that really matters. And every week we can see from them the potential for what they could do, in the postseason with their bats, and once that pitching rotation kind of tightens down and that kind of thing, it'll be interesting to see how the district tournament plays out.
Well, they can hit. Now it just comes down to pitching.
Yeah,
and catching the ball. They're
like talking about the Reds in a way,
You're right.
And meanwhile, Barren County went 3-1 on the week. Their loss though was to Logan County, and it was 10-0, which I'm sure was a disappointing loss for them. Logan's usually one of the better teams in the region, and I think they are again this year. But otherwise, I mean, they had a solid week. Yeah,
3-1. They're 16-7. Defeated Metcalf 11-1.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Watson got the win. He has not normally pitched the whole game. I think he got that one. Defeated ACS 9-2. I think Blake Cook, who's established himself as one of Barron's best pitchers, got the win there. And Monroe 14-1. Cody Moore got that win.
Yeah.
And then lost to Logan 10-0. I don't think they obviously did not play their best that game, but 3-1 for the week. And they got Jamison Bowie and Blake Cook for sure. 1 and 2, and
mm-hmm.
and it just seems like for the most part they found enough hitting, and their pitching and defense has been probably above what they thought.
Mm-hmm.
And Brennan Hicks is having a fantastic year. He's hitting 407. Cody Moore 380. Zach Watson 359. I mean, those kids are really hitting the ball well. Today, I think Barron has Ohio County today.
Yeah. That's their senior day today over there at Barren County for baseball. Like I mentioned, the softball senior day was Friday night.
Right. Everybody does those now way before their last game.
Yeah, because you don't know what's going to happen.
You do that in basketball now, too, because you never know with weather. And if you want to cause a commotion now, in today's time, don't have a senior day.
Right.
And they'll
make you play a game to have a senior day.
You talking about upset? That has been an evolution in sports, because back when we were in school 40 years ago almost, the senior day was hello.
Yes, have a cookie.
That's about it.
Enjoy life.
That was not. And it's turned into a everywhere. I'm not talking about just here. Everywhere.
No, yeah.
I mean, it is something that you have to have.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's everything evolves, John. Everything evolves, I suppose.
That's exactly right.
Real quick. Also, I was going to mention our coverage today because Greg Rich is going to be at Barren County shooting photos of the baseball and softball. I'm going to try to get in 2 games, go to the Glasgow softball game and the Glasgow baseball game today. Everybody's at home today, which means we got to hustle a little harder than we usually do. So.
And it's not as easy with Glasgow because we got them on
one's at
3 miles apart.
Yeah, one's at the school and one's over at Gorin Park.
Right.
So I hope I don't get a speeding ticket. I won't. I'll take it easy. All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's in Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, I want to start off this particular segment. It's going to be a basketball segment, but let's start off by talking about Clarence Glover, because he was inducted into the Kentucky Basketball Hall of Fame on Saturday. And if people don't know, this is a thing in Elizabethtown. I don't remember. It's been going on maybe 10 years, but I don't think it's been that long. Maybe 7 or 8 years. And it's a pretty cool facility up there. It's on Main Street there in Elizabethtown, right off the square. You can't miss it because it's got a bunch of big orange basketballs leading you to the front door. And I imagine that it's actually open again. I think it's open now, or open this past weekend for the season. It had been closed because of COVID and that kind of stuff. You couldn't go in there, but you could go online and view the people the inductees and that kind of stuff, and schedule of events and news about the organization. So anyway, Clarence Glover, who played at Caverna, graduated in '67 there, Then went on and played at WKU, was part of their Final Four team. That included him, Rex Bailey from Glasgow, Jim McDaniels from Allen County, and then a couple of other guys, one from Hazard, Jim Rose, I think, from Hazard. I can't remember the fifth guy. I think he was the only one who was not actually from Kentucky. So 4 of the 5 starters on that team were all from Kentucky, 3 of them from right here in South Central Kentucky. And Clarence, like I said, Clarence Glover was one of those. And he's a pretty neat guy because
got drafted by the Celtics, right?
That's right. He's a number 10 pick overall, I think, in the 71 NBA draft by the Celtics. He probably could have made a pro career. Now, he ended up getting cut by the Celtics, but he could have probably played in the ABA or gone to some other team. 6'8" athletic people were not the norm at that time in professional basketball, and that's kind of what set him apart. But his ambition was always to be an educator, which is what he ended up doing, was going into education, was a teacher, principal, those kinds of things for I think he started out working in the Boston area and then eventually moved back to Kentucky. So, his grand ambition in life wasn't to be a professional basketball player, which is probably why he wasn't a professional basketball player. And there's some other interesting things. I mean, it's just he if you ever see him now, he's still a striking guy. I mean, he's in his 70s, still 6'8", still a lean-looking guy, and he just kind of set he and the guys from Glasgow and Jim McDaniels, I mean, they set a tone for basketball in South Central Kentucky that I don't think has existed since they all left high school, John. Well,
I mean, he's, I was at Cavern a couple years, student taught over there and coached basketball 2 years, and he obviously he and Coach Dorsey, who was the basketball and baseball coach over there, left a huge impression. I mean, state title, is that correct? Right? Yeah. I mean,
he won a state title in baseball with Denny Doyle back in the early 60s.
Coach Dorsey did. Yeah.
Yes, Coach Dorsey did.
Right, and I think Clarence Glover played baseball too.
Yes, he did.
Right, and Coach Dorsey also coached basketball. Yeah, and Clarence, I call him Mr. Glover. He had a monster impression.
Right.
People over there still know about him. And then obviously went on to Western and to the Celtics. But it's interesting how his dream was not growing up to be an NBA player, like so many players are today. But he wanted to get into education, and as an educator, that's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine to some degree you can identify with that a little bit in the sense that, I mean, you could have gone and been an attorney or many other things but you chose to go into education, a path that some people would look at you and say, "Are you crazy for doing that?"
Well, I mean, not as crazy as maybe an MBA to an educator.
Yeah,
I mean that's even in a lot of ways people look at you even more odd.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, he's an impressive guy, and congratulations for him getting into that Basketball Hall of Fame. Seems kind of
late.
Yes,
yeah,
that's exactly what I thought.
Of course, the Kentucky Basketball Hall of Fame has not been around forever either.
No, like I said, it's 10 years or less.
Right,
it's not been around a real long time. But anyway, I thought that was great for him. I think Jim McDaniels is already in there. I'm sure there are others. I don't think Ralph Dorsey is in there yet. He seems like a person who should be in there on some level. We probably have others from this area who will eventually find their way in there, I'd guess.
I'm sure.
I'd imagine Bobby Steenbergen might be one of those.
Could be. Very deserving.
Yep. Meanwhile, I also wanted to talk about the NBA playoffs because I find this play-in thing rather fascinating.
Well, go ahead and explain it because I don't understand it.
All right, so here it is. The top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, they're set.
Used to be 8.
Used to be 8. So what they did was, and they said it was for this year because they shortened the season, I think, by 10 games, and they added these play-in games. And so the way this works is not the way that you would imagine it does. So what happens is you have a 7 and an 8 and a 9 and a 10. Traditionally speaking, that 7 and 8 would already be in the playoffs, and 9 and 10 would just be out of luck. But the way they set it up was 7 and 8 will play each other, and then 9 and 10 will play each other. The loser of the 9-10 games is eliminated. The winner gets another game. The winner of the 7-8 game is the 7 seed. All right, in both whichever conference it's in.
Right.
And then
then 8 has to play 9.
Yes, and the winner of that game is the 8th seed. So technically speaking, the Spurs, who have won 33 games and at their 10 spot, could wind up being the 8th seed.
This sounds like TV only.
Well, the thing that is interesting to me,
which they need viewers.
Yeah, they do, and I think it will work to generate viewership.
Well, because Steph Curry is playing and LeBron James is in the 7th and 8th.
That's right. They're playing each other. All right.
Yeah,
and
that's going to get some viewers.
Yeah, that's a fascinating the way that worked out, and I know whenever they set this up, they did not expect that to be the case. I mean, who did? I mean, first of all, no one had expected the Warriors to have a shot because Klay Thompson's not playing. Basically, the only player they really have is Steph Curry.
Draymond Green.
Yeah, they got Draymond Green, but he's not. I mean, he's still a good defensive player and rebounder, but on the offensive side, he's been a dud for most of the season. But his facilitation has probably helped out a lot. And then, of course, everybody pretty much figured the Lakers would be the 1 seed, but because of injuries and other, resting, yes.
The whole league rest.
Yeah, they do.
That's why I'm very down on the league.
Well, the regular season, I've only started watching it the last few weeks. I think we talked about that, just because there are players I like to watch play, but I'm not as interested in the other things, because you turn on the game expecting a player to play and they're not there, and that's very disappointing. It's not as disappointing if you bought tickets and went to the game.
Right. They do have an issue that they're going to solve.
That's right. And
if playing 82 is too many, then they don't need to play 82.
Well, and apparently playing 72 was too many.
Then they don't need to play 72, or something's got to change.
They in baseball have a similar problem, in my opinion, in that they play so many games in the regular season that it loses a lot of the steam, especially because in baseball what happens is the pitching rotations and that kind of thing. You don't know, if you go to a baseball game and you want to see the top players, you may not see them. Plus, they also have people who take a day off now in baseball.
True, but you can go to a baseball series and you're going to see them.
Yes.
I mean, they play 162. You may not see them all 4 games.
You got to buy tickets for all those games.
But their issue is not near as bad as the basketball one.
It's not as bad, and it's not a new invention in baseball per se. So you know what you're getting when you buy a ticket to a baseball game. It's a new invention in basketball in the NBA, which is part of what the problem is. But yeah, I'm with you. Then they play too many games, and what I was going to say is, I actually kind of like the expanded playoffs and the shortened regular season. Expanded in the sense that these are one-and-done games. So, that 9-10 game, if you lose that 9-10 game, it's just over with. Now, you may be the Spurs, and you may be ready for your season to be over with. You may not be. You know what I mean? You may have been a team that had injuries, and not people sitting out, but had injuries the whole season, and you have a shot here, and you got a completely different team than what their record indicates, which has been the case before in basketball. It happens in the NCAA tournament a lot of times. You wind up with a team that's an 11 seed, UCLA, in a play-in game. They were probably better than they were.
But it's only for that one little series. Everything else is best of 7.
Yes, which is also too many games.
But very much so.
Yeah, I mean, I do miss the 5-game series.
I do too.
For that first round.
The first couple rounds used to be best of 5, and in a couple years, the first round was 2 out of 3.
Yeah, and they nixed that a long time ago, mostly because
Seattle got beat. That was your Seattle got beat with Sean Kemp. That was a 5-game
series.
Okay, I thought it was best out of 3.
Yeah,
okay.
That was a 5-game series. It was nixed though after the Nuggets and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf and Dikembe Mutombo upset the number 1, I think, 64-win game Sonics that had Sean Kemp and Hersey Hawkins and Gary Payton, and they were supposed to challenge the Bulls to win the championship. They did nix the 5-game series after that. They nixed the 3-game series sometime in the 80s because you had in the late 70s, early 80s, you had the Lakers lost, I think, in 78 to the Sonics in the first round 2-1. And then they lost, I think, in 82 to the Rockets 2-1. And so they nixed that after the Lakers got knocked out twice in 3-game series. They were like, well, that's enough of that. But anyway, I'm looking forward to these games. They're played Tuesday and Wednesday, and I will be watching these. I'm not as interested in that Lakers-Warriors game as maybe I am in the ones in the East.
The NBA has fallen behind. I can just tell you my viewing right now. women's softball is number one.
Mm-hmm.
Hockey is now number 2.
Oh, I can't stomach hockey.
I love playoff hockey. I watched Carolina and Florida Florida and Tampa last night. It was outstanding.
So did it stop? Did it start them by them dropping the puck and then dropping their gloves and then everybody going into a slugfest like the game a couple of weeks ago between the Capitals and the
No,
Islanders?
there wasn't a lot of.
No, that was fun hockey.
In the playoffs, there's not a lot of fighting, but it's physical.
Yeah.
And then the NBA, right there with baseball. Even the NBA playoffs. I will watch the Lakers and Golden State. I will watch that one, and I'm intrigued by watching New York because of the Kentucky connection. And
Julius Randle. I was going to say. I've
Right.
mentioned the last few weeks I've started watching some games. Nikola Jokic. I'd mentioned that. Julius Randle is a lot of fun to watch play basketball.
Yeah, coach of the year in my opinion.
Yeah, Tom Thibodeau there
has to be that turnaround. And also, slightly pulling for Utah. I like Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a great guy from Louisville, but a great guy too. So yeah there's some intrigue there along the way, but in terms of I stopped doing something else just to watch it. No. I will not.
So if you're shopping, you won't cut that short.
I'm not making us. If it's on, it's on.
Yeah.
But and I'm. It's just I want to see the best players playing. And I want to see a little sense of urgency.
I do. There were certain teams that I just could not watch, and I probably can't watch them in the playoffs either, just because I don't like the style of basketball or that kind of thing. But there are teams, going back to what you said about watching the Knicks and the Kentucky connections. I mean, Julius Randle is right up there with people. I mean, he's an impressive basketball player, and I always thought coming out of Kentucky he could be, but it just didn't. He got drafted by the Lakers there, he was at the Lakers, and that was just complete dud. Like, I just thought his career was over with, and then he goes to the Knicks, and I guess Tom Thibodeau gets those guys to play defense first and foremost, play hard all the time. And Julius Randle is kind of a poster child for kind of a throwback mentality, I think. I mean, he's rebounding, he's handling the ball, shooting outside shots, cleaning up the boards. I mean, he's doing every last thing you could ask of a basketball player. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of it's fit.
Yeah.
Getting the right system, right coach, right place. And, a lot of times in these professional sports is where do you land?
Yeah.
And what's your and do you fit with the coach? Do you fit with the style of play? And clearly he's found a spot.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I mean, it's he's not the only Kentucky player there.
Quigley.
Yeah, Quigley's there.
I think they have 4 on their team actually. Noel is
Nerlens Noel. I forgot he was even there. I didn't recognize him when he was playing.
The guy that went to Western, Robinson.
Oh yeah, Mitchell Robinson.
Mitchell Robinson's there.
Yep.
And there's another Kentucky player.
Went to Western.
Yeah. And there's another Kentucky player that was a number 1 pick a couple years ago. Oh, I forgot his name. He didn't play a lot, but he's on the roster.
Yeah. I mean, it's I guess going back to the idea of those playoffs, I'm with you in a couple of things, and I think that to me, baseball and the NBA viewing experience are impacted by fan attendance. Now, I can't really watch baseball on TV to start with. I like going to a Major League Baseball game because baseball, that pace thing, is something that I just can't deal with.
It's fair.
But also that fan attendance in the NBA, I think, elevates the viewing experience there.
It does.
And that's certainly been an impact this year. And I don't know how long they can go on without having folks at the games, because it's kind of like watching a video game in a way, which I'm not of the generation that enjoys watching people play video games.
I don't know why they don't let people go right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's several ways to do it. You can require people to been back if that's what you want to do. I mean, it looks like to me they've kind of been given the clear if they want to move that direction. They clearly should open it up at least some.
Yeah.
I don't understand why there's still certain places when there's nobody there. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, me neither. All right, this Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's in Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we didn't really talk about this last week. We just kind of let it ride until after the Preakness to see how things shook out. But let's just step back for a real minute here. After the Kentucky Derby, a few days after, I guess they did whatever the drug test they do on the horses, and Medina Spirit had some, banned substance. And my thought was, okay, well, they're going to do a second test because that's what they do, is they do the second test.
Split sample.
Yeah, so let's see what happens after the second test. But before we could ever get there, as the world does, it came off the rails. And one of the things that fascinated me about it coming off the rails was Bob Baffert's initial response, where he gets on TV and talk shows or whatever
he
blames everybody else.
Right.
Which disappointed me.
It should. Two things can be right here, and I think there's two things right.
Yeah.
The substance that was in the horse was a over-the-counter skin ointment and you could see the horse had like hives and so forth. That was not in any way used to. It was not a
there's no enhancement.
No,
from it.
none.
Yeah.
No, it was the skin, whatever. But it had the substance, and it's clear. I've seen the label. It had the banned substance.
Yeah, right there on it, like
right there on
letters.
it.
Yeah.
That's correct. And Bob Baffert is the trainer, and whether he did that or not, he had somebody in his group because they've been treating that horse for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Do I think it had anything to do with the winner of the Kentucky Derby? No.
No, absolutely
But
not.
he knew the rules.
Right.
And he's under a lot of scrutiny because he's had 5 of these.
Yes.
In just the last 2 years.
Yes.
And what I've come to realize about Baffert, I think he's a great trainer, is he's sloppy. That's what it comes down to. He's not one of these people, in my opinion, that is, you got people who are very detail oriented and things like that. Well, Baffert, in my opinion, is more. He does a great job of training horses, but when it comes to some of this administrative things, he's
sometimes more salesman than he is actually
a little bit more aloof. That's correct. And so I think that's nobody else in the race had any issue. Mm-hmm. So everybody knew the rules, but he's kind of always been a little bit on the sloppy side, and I guess what's disappointing is it's caused a lot of. It's taken away from the sport. It's taken away from the Derby, which is one of the prized sporting events in the world, and obviously in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is the horse is going to be disqualified. And now the separate issue is, should that be enough to, do they need to rewrite the rules where that's not so punitive?
Right.
Well, that may be a separate issue. But Bob Baffert has to take responsibility, and he threw everybody under the bus at first.
Yeah, he did.
And then he finally realized, well, wait a minute now. I guess it is kind of our responsibility. but it didn't help the horse in any way. Well, it's just that's like as a coach that you have to when you play in a district or the region, you have to make sure that everybody that you have is on the roster.
Yeah.
Well, what if you find out that I just didn't put this person on the roster, but everybody knows that person's on a roster, I just failed to do it. Well, that's kind of your responsibility.
Yeah, when they step out on their court and they're an illegal player because their number's not in the book or they're not on the official roster,
that's on you.
Yeah. And that was my first thought was actually
this is not a drug case where he was given steroids and things like that. And the national media didn't handle this very right because there's people that are after the sport.
Yeah.
And they think, oftentimes these horses were drugged. That's not this case at all.
Well, that's why I said things just went off the rail pretty much immediately.
It's a negligence on the trainer, but it was not intentionally done to aid the horse in terms of trying to win the race. That was not it.
I thought about Rick Pitino at Louisville. This is what I thought about because we talk about these people being the CEO of their organization, whatever that is. And they are not, as the CEO, they're not micromanaging the day-to-day operations. But part of what their job is, their duty is if something occurs to after the fact, make sure you know what the answers are before you go and start saying things.
Right.
So that you don't sound like an idiot or get yourself fired down the road.
I think part of it with him is he's been under scrutiny, and he promised after last year, he got in trouble last year, that he was going to hire a full-time vet, which didn't really happen because of COVID. He was going to take greater detail, and it doesn't look like it's happened.
Yeah.
And,
well, because it took him one day to get mad and lash out at everybody, and the second day for him to go, well, maybe 2 days later for him to go, well, okay, we did screw up.
That's right.
I mean, all he had to do was wait. But it wasn't intentional. Yeah, all he had to do was actually wait that day, and he'd have had his answers, and then he could have gone on the talk shows and on TV and not called it cancel culture and all this other nonsense that he was talking about.
And since then, even just yesterday, he's apologized again. He said for the way I handled it, he said it was terrible.
Yeah, and he should.
He should.
But he also, the question is, next year when we run into some issues, because we do seem to do this.
The horse is going to get disqualified. It's going to come back. The split sample is going to come back just like the first one. And then it's going to come down to, what's going to happen to him.
Right.
He's not going to be banned. He shouldn't be banned. I mean, this was not an intentional act. It was a negligent act. But he's going to get some days, and we'll just see how he handles it. Is he going to fight it, or will he accept it, or what? So we'll see.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It'll be interesting to see whenever it comes up, when something happens again, if he's learned anything from how he.
Well, I just want to see how he handles what the punishment's going to be.
Well, that's a good point too. Yeah. Yeah, because will he go and start calling it cancel culture?
That's right, and I hope he shouldn't get a year, but it did cause a lot of, bad will to a sport that needs goodwill.
Yeah.
So he's going to get something.
Sometimes I've said this about,
and his horse did not win the Preakness, by the way. Rombard, I think, is the name of the horse. Medina Spirit ran third, and didn't quite have that punch in the lane at the end.
Yeah. I've often said this about circumstances where a politician or somebody something occurs, there's an issue, and instead of them taking charge and saying we goofed up or we made a mistake or I did this incorrectly or that was my fault, but let's look toward the future, they start working about trying to cover up and tell people not to say anything But in the end, the cover up and the response is always worse if it's a negative response than the actual act itself. More often than not.
More often than not, that's correct.
And let's talk about this real quick. The Barren County Board of Education unanimously voted no on the do-over year last Thursday. So the students who had requested from the school district that they get to redo the year they had taken this year, the school board said they were not going to allow those students to do that.
Bowling Green voted no. Edmondson's voted no. More schools have voted no than I originally thought would, but it's a tough call for them, I'll be honest with you, because you got the kids who want to take the year over, and you got also you got kids who have maybe waited their time to play. And so you have competing ideas what's going on, and I think the bad part about it is the schools should not really be in this position. In my opinion, if you're going to come up with this law by the state, it either pass it for everybody or don't pass it all. But once you throw it down to localize, it can get very personal and very difficult. And that's the part that I don't think was either. I don't know if the lawmakers thought about that and decided to do it anyway, or maybe they just never thought about it. But it has put a lot of the superintendents and Board of Education people in some very difficult positions.
Well, and meanwhile, Glasgow, what they did was they went ahead and voted yes, even before the students had to tell them whether or not they wanted to come back, which was probably the way the law should have been set up anyway. So the boards had to make decisions without any names on the table that they were discussing it, so that it's not about the people who wanted it or didn't want it.
Right.
Which is the thing that happens at the local control level. People make it personal even when it's not.
That's correct.
All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.